Hello, my name is Luke Riediger. I am the Executive Director for the Applegate Neighborhood Network, and I am also the Siskiyou Conservation Director for the Klamath Forest Alliance. The Applegate Neighborhood Network operates in the 500,000-acre Applegate River Watershed and also works in the Siskiyou Crest region, while the Klamath Forest Alliance works throughout southwestern Oregon and northwestern California in the Klamath-Siskiyou Mountains. And I, in particular, run the Siskiyou Mountain operations for the Klamath Forest Alliance. Today, I'm going to be doing a presentation called the Wild and Scenic Applegate River Watershed. The Wild and Scenic Applegate River Watershed highlights the wild and scenic segments proposed for designation by the Applegate Neighborhood Network and Klamath Forest Alliance in the Applegate River Watershed. We proposed these in response to a request from Senators Wyden and Merkley in Oregon for nominations to include in upcoming legislation to protect Oregon watersheds as wild and scenic rivers. So the Applegate River Watershed is located in southwestern Oregon in Josephine and Jackson County, with portions of the watershed lying just over the border in northwestern California in Siskiyou County. A tributary of the Rogue River with its confluence west of Grants Pass, Oregon, the river's headwaters is located on the Siskiyou Crest. Although southwestern Oregon and northwestern California have significant concentrations of wild and scenic rivers, the Applegate River watershed contains no wild and scenic river segments. In fact, not a single acre of the Applegate River watershed has received any form of permanent protection since the 1987 designation of the Red Buttes Wilderness Area. The Applegate River contains some of Oregon's most diverse wildlands and spectacular scenery, yet remains mostly unprotected. Yet we would like to start changing this with new wild and scenic river designations. This photo looks north from the Red Buttes Wilderness area down the unprotected middle fork of the Applegate River to the Whiskey Peak Roadless area. Although in some ways happily forgotten, the area is also underappreciated, underprotected, and often overlooked by legislators and conservationists across the region. Many portions of our wild and scenic river proposals are located in roadless areas in need of permanent protection as wilderness. And those include the Condrey Mountain Roadless area in the Elliott Creek watershed shown in this photograph. The area contains spectacular old growth forests like those on the Pipe Fork of Williams Creek in the Kangaroo Inventoried Roadless area. The area also contains clear mountain streams like Dutch Creek, a tributary of Elliott Creek that flows through the Condrey Mountain Inventoried Roadless area, down off the Siskiyou Crest into the Applegate River watershed. Our wild and scenic river proposals would protect many important values associated with healthy riparian areas, including habitat for anadromous fisheries, wildlife, native forests, and clean water. The Applegate River watershed contains 17 unprotected roadless areas on both BLM and Forest Service lands, including many that are included in our wild and scenic river proposal. This photo shows the vast old growth forests in the middle fork of the Applegate River drainage. The majority of this forest is located in unprotected roadless areas adjacent to, but outside the Red Buttes Wilderness area. The Applegate River flows northwest from the Siskiyou Crest to its confluence with the Rogue River near Grants Pass, Oregon. It flows through farms, ranches, vineyards, and small rural communities in the Applegate Valley in southwestern Oregon. None of the Applegate River in the valley bottom and flowing through these private lands are proposed for wild and scenic river protections. In the upper watershed, the river flows through spectacular canyons, oak woodlands, and ancient conifer forests. The upper watershed contains the most remote, wild, and inaccessible portions of the watershed and the majority of the proposed wild and scenic river streams. The watershed can be divided into three main ecoregions. The westernmost portion of the Applegate River reaches into the serpentine Siskiyou ecoregion. Here, in the lower Applegate River watershed, conditions are more moist and temperate in the winter months, with a pronounced coastal influence and a dramatic mixture of rocky serpentine soils and more productive forests. The more interior Applegate foothills contains a diverse and unique mixture of dry mixed conifer forests, arid grasslands, oak woodland, and chaparral. Botanically and climatically speaking, the area is a unique blend between the California foothills, the mountains of Western Oregon, and the sagebrush steppe of Eastern Oregon and Nevada. The headwaters of the river are located on the Siskiyou Crest, one of the Pacific Northwest's most important connectivity and climate migration corridors. The Siskiyou Crest is the only high elevation corridor connecting the Coast Range to the Cascade Mountains. It also hosts unparalleled levels of biodiversity and vast forested wildlands, high elevation meadows, parklands, and spectacular mountain scenery that includes streams like Alex Creek in the proposed Wild and Scenic Elliott Creek watershed. Applegate Neighborhood Network and Klamath Forest Alliance have proposed 169 miles of proposed Wild and Scenic River segments throughout the Applegate River watershed. We have included wild segments, recreational segments, and scenic segments. This includes lands managed by the Medford District BLM and the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest. The BLM land is depicted in green in this map. The BLM land is depicted in yellow in this map, while the Forest Service lands are depicted in green. The white is private lands. This map shows that the majority of the watershed is public land and that all Wild and Scenic River designations are located on those public lands. The Applegate River watershed contains the Red Buttes Wilderness Area, shown in dark green at the bottom of the map here, and many important botanical areas, research natural areas, areas of critical environmental concern, and other areas reserved administratively to protect natural, recreational, botanical, and wildland values by both the Forest Service and the BLM. Of the watershed's 17 unprotected roadless areas, only 4 roadless areas have been inventoried by the Forest Service and have received some level of protection. The Burton 9 Mile lands with wilderness characteristics and the Burton 9 Mile roadless area on Star Gulch have also received some level of protection for its wilderness values as lands with wilderness characteristics on BLM land. This area is not shown on the map here because inventoried roadless areas are only found currently on Forest Service lands. The area also includes a lot of old growth forests, as well as critical habitat for the northern spotted owl. So you can see here how our Wild and Scenic River segments, shown in blue and light blue, coincide with spotted owl critical habitat throughout the Applegate River watershed. The area also contains a number of late successional reserves designated to protect habitat for the northern spotted owl and facilitate species recovery. Many of these areas of importance for the northern spotted owl will also be important as denning habitat for the newly protected Pacific fisher, which has received endangered species status and the Applegate contains some pretty robust populations of Pacific fisher and is vitally important as a connectivity corridor between existing populations in northwestern California and southwestern Oregon. The wildland habitats of the Applegate are also important for outdoor recreation, including many beautiful hiking trails that are utilized by folks all across the state, and in particular, folks here in southwestern Oregon. For example, the Sterling Mine Ditch Trail is located in the Little Applegate River watershed. It is one of only 8 Oregon state scenic trails. And then there is also a variety of hiking trails throughout the watershed that intersect or coincide with our Wild and Scenic River proposals. The Pacific Crest Trail is also an important recreational resource in the area. It traverses the eastern Siskiyou Crest at the headwaters of the Applegate River, and protecting the streams below the Pacific Crest Trail with Wild and Scenic River designation would help to protect the view sheds of the Pacific Crest Trail. So the first major tributary of the Applegate River upstream of its confluence with the Rogue River is Slate Creek, and portions of Slate Creek have been proposed for Wild and Scenic River designation. Portions of Slate Creek run along Highway 199, southwest of Grants Pass, but the headwaters of Slate Creek contain wilderness quality habitats. You can see here in our proposal in this map that Slate Creek is in the northwestern corner of the Applegate River watershed and is isolated from a lot of the other wildland habitats in the area. The Slate Creek proposal contains 9.7 miles of stream, including the headwaters of Slate Creek, Cedar Log Creek, and portions of Buckeye Creek. The area supports serpentine soils. These are ancient mantle rocks that originated as ancient ocean floors. They've been pushed and folded in and uplifted in and pushed inland to create the mountains that we know today as the Siskiyou Mountains. In particular, the Slate Creek watershed is located in what we call the serpentine Siskiyous. Serpentine soils are essentially low in essential plant nutrients and high in many heavy metals. This makes this soil type essentially toxic to many native plant species, and the species that thrive there have adapted over long periods of time to be able to deal with these unusual soil conditions and thrive in these sites when other species cannot. So these serpentine soils are stunted, they're open, and they're unusual. They're especially unusual for Western Oregon, where we are known for our dense conifer forests. But despite averaging over 50 inches of annual rainfall, these forests support only twisted pine, stunted fir trees, and brushy slopes of chaparral. Yet despite the harsh soils, streams like Slate Creek, Cedar Log Creek, Buckeye Creek contain beautiful riparian areas and groves of Port Orford cedar. Port Orford cedar is endemic to southwestern Oregon and northwestern California. It's found nowhere else in the world. And many of the Port Orford cedar forests throughout its limited range have been infected by the Port Orford cedar root rot, which is a Phytophthora species, similar to, say, the Irish potato blight. But what it does is it infects and it kills Port Orford cedar trees, especially adjacent to waterways, which is really important because this is a riparian species and a moisture-loving species. The stands up on Slate Creek are currently uninfected with the Port Orford cedar root rot that is killing these trees throughout its range, and it provides an important refugia for this species to survive here in the Siskiyou Mountains. The area also includes the Cedar Log Flat Research Natural Area, which is included within the proposed Wild and Scenic Slate Creek proposal. And it includes Cedar Log Creek and Cedar Log Flat, which is shown here in this photograph. And this area protects a unique pine savanna habitat, as well as intact native grasslands on serpentine soils. It also protects the only population of the carnivorous cobra lily in the Applegate River watershed. So cobra lily, or Darlingtonia californica, is a species that's adapted to these moist sites, what we call fens, that are very similar to wetlands or bogs, although they're more flowing. And this species is, as I said, carnivorous. It augments the low nutrient soils by feeding on insects that get trapped inside its fused leaves. And as I said, this is the only population you will find in the Applegate River watershed. The area also contains numerous rare plant species, including the Siskiyou fritillary, shown here, and the Waldo buckwheat, which is found only at Cedar Log Flat and in the southern Illinois River Valley. So it's endemic to this small portion of southwestern Oregon, and the only population of Waldo buckwheat found in the Applegate River watershed is right here in the Cedar Log Flat Research Natural Area on Slate Creek within our proposed Wild and Scenic River. So upstream on the main stem of the Applegate River, the river flows into the interior portions of the Applegate River Valley, and it meets Williams Creek. So Williams Creek pours off of Grayback Mountain from the Kangaroo Inventoried Roadless area and into the broad Williams Valley. Williams Creek is an important low gradient stream and tributary of the Applegate River. And because of that low gradient condition, it's very important for coho salmon. So although only about 12% of the Rogue River Basin, the Applegate River contains roughly 1/3 of all coho spawning habitat. And Williams Creek supports the largest population of coho salmon in the Applegate River watershed. So Pipe Fork is located at the headwaters of Williams Creek, above the Williams Valley in the Middle Applegate River watershed, and below both Grayback Mountain and Sugarloaf Peak. You can see it here circled in red. So it's kind of in the central part of the Applegate Valley. The proposal contains 3 miles of the Pipe Fork, including both wild and scenic segments. So the Pipe Fork is the last wild stream in the Williams Creek watershed. The stream flows from its headwaters at Larkspur Spring into the Pipe Fork Research Natural Area. The Pipe Fork Research Natural Area was designated to protect the easternmost stands of Port Orford cedar in Oregon. And this beautiful stand of Port Orford cedar, including many old growth trees, is also uninfected by the Port Orford cedar root rot and remains a refugia for the species. So the old growth forests on the Pipe Fork contain massive Douglas firs, sugar pine, white fir, and Port Orford cedar, as well as many beautiful hardwood species. This habitat is contiguous with the Kangaroo Roadless area and contains important habitat for the Pacific fisher, the northern spotted owl, and other species associated with these late successional or old growth habitats. We have also proposed the Wild and Scenic Little Applegate River in the Little Applegate River Canyon. And so you can see our proposal here, again, circled in red. It's located in the more arid interior portions of the watershed, below some of the highest peaks in the Siskiyou Crest region. The proposal contains 16 miles of streams in the Little Applegate River Canyon, including a recreational segment on the main stem of the river. And the blank spaces along the river are private lands and private inholdings within the BLM ownership, which would not be included in the designation. So we would be looking at the main stem of the river on private lands for Wild and Scenic River designation, and also tributary streams on BLM lands as well. So the Little Applegate River watershed is the driest watershed west of the Cascades in Oregon. It contains a unique mixture of arid grasslands, like these in the Dakabetiti Roadless area, oak woodland, chaparral, and dry conifer forests. This area was previously proposed by Senators Wyden and Senator Merkley as a large backcountry primitive area, but was not protected under the proposed legislation and remains unprotected today. So this area supports dense stands of chaparral at the northern end of its vast range in the California floristic province. The plant community is known as Southern Oregon chaparral due to its distinctive ecology and composition. It's actually been studied and been found to be quite different than the chaparral habitats to the south in California, but it does support numerous species of flowering plants and songbirds, rare in Oregon, but more abundant in California. The Little Applegate River Canyon supports beautiful oak woodlands, lining the ridges and the south-facing slopes up above the river corridor. And the river corridor itself supports some beautiful old growth, dry, mixed conifer forests that extend along the main stem of the river and up the tributary streams. So this proposal includes about 6 miles of the main stem of the Little Applegate River in the Little Applegate River Canyon, and also includes numerous tributary streams, including portions of Glade Creek, shown here, Blacksmith Gulch, Muddy Gulch, Birch Creek, Owl Gulch, and Bear Gulch. The Little Applegate River is an important tributary of the Applegate River with fisheries of coho salmon, Chinook salmon, and steelhead, as well as important habitat for the northern spotted owl, the Pacific fisher, and the endangered, or the endemic, excuse me, Siskiyou Mountain salamander, who utilizes old growth forest and habitats along the Little Applegate River Canyon. Portions of the Sterling Ditch Trail, which is directly above the Little Applegate River Canyon and traverses some of these tributary streams that we're proposing for designation, is one of only 8 Oregon state scenic trails. The Sterling Mine Ditch Trail is follows a nearly 20-mile long ditch system built to facilitate hydraulic mining in the late 1870s on a tributary of the Little Applegate River called Sterling Creek. So this ditch system is now a popular hiking trail and mountain biking trail, but it is also an important and interesting historic resource. So the area on the Little Applegate River proposal and along the Sterling Mine Ditch Trail contains the Siskiyou Mountains' only population of water birch, and this is found in the Birch Creek watershed in the Dockabetee Roadless area. And there are also large populations of Gentner's fritillaria, which is an endangered species that is found only in southwestern Oregon. Gentner's fritillaria is found throughout southwestern Oregon in some isolated populations, but the vast majority of this endemic species population is found within an 11-mile radius of Jacksonville, Oregon, and some of the densest, most important populations of the species are found in the Dockabetee Roadless area, the Dockabetee area of critical environmental concern, and in the Birch Creek watershed, which is proposed for Wild and Scenic River protections. So this area also contains unique limestone benches, and in particular, Birch Creek supports a lot of this kind of habitat. These are rare geomorphological formations that have built up in calcified stream beds, creating unique limestone benches and tufa deposits. And these deposits in the Birch Creek watershed have developed over long periods of time to the point that they have leveled out small meadows and otherwise steep canyons and created these unusual limestone benches, which tend to support rare lichen and birophyte communities, and is also kind of the center of the population for the water birch, which is found nowhere else in Oregon except for northeastern Oregon up in the Wallowa Mountains. So the Audubon Society has identified this area as an important bird area due to the unique Oregon populations of chaparral. Songbirds such as the blue-gray gnatcatcher, the Nashville warbler, and the California towhee are all rare in Oregon and are more common in California, but they are found in the chaparral habitats quite abundantly here in the Little Applegate River watershed. So the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife has also designated the area as a conservation opportunity area to protect south-facing grasslands and mature conifer forests, as well as to improve riparian conditions in the proposed Wild and Scenic Little Applegate River watershed. So now we're going to move on into the Upper Applegate proposal, which is actually being broken into a number of smaller proposals. We have the Upper Applegate proposal, we have the headwaters of the Applegate proposal, we have the forks of Carberry Creek, and also the Elliott Creek proposal. So we're going to be going over all of those in this next section. This is the largest concentration of wild streams in the Applegate River watershed. It's found in the Upper Applegate area adjacent to the Upper Applegate Valley. And it's located both above and below the Applegate River, or the Applegate Dam, and the Applegate Reservoir. So this photo shows the lower Elliott Creek and Middle Fork Applegate River watersheds from the Strickland Butte Roadless area. So you can see the Elliott Creek Canyon is extending off to the east, while the Middle Fork Canyon is extending to the north. And you can just see that there's an abundance of very steep mountainous country with dense, deep old growth forests, mixed conifer forests. And not only does this area support a lot of important habitat and important old growth forest, but this is where you will find the largest unprotected wildlands and protected wildlands in the Applegate River watershed. So the Upper Applegate Wild and Scenic River proposal includes roughly 140 miles of stream in the Upper Applegate River Watershed, which is circled here in red. This accounts for roughly 82% of the stream miles proposed for Wild and Scenic River designation in the Applegate River Watershed. About 24 miles of stream are proposed in the arid foothills of the Upper Applegate Valley. This has been broken off into the Upper Applegate Wild and Scenic River proposal, and it includes Star Gulch, Palmer Creek, Kinney Creek, and Mule Creek, which are all tributaries of the main stem Applegate River. So Mule Creek flows through the Little Grayback Roadless area and is traversed by the popular Mule Mountain Trail and Loop, which loops through the stream corridor and back up onto the ridges. There's about 6 miles of Mule Creek included in this Wild and Scenic River proposal, and this is perhaps the most intact major watershed in the Applegate River foothills, with beautiful non-forest plant communities such as oak woodland and chaparral, and also some beautiful old-growth forests. So you can see how in this photograph, how the south-facing slopes up above Mule Creek support chaparral, grassland habitats, oak woodland. These slopes are much more exposed and tend to be arid and basically sun-baked all summer. So they support these non-forest plant communities dominated by oak woodland and chaparral and interspersed with these native grasslands. So while the Mule Creek Canyon flows through those areas, it contains numerous small but important perennial streams and clear flowing waters coming down out of that Little Grayback Roadless area. And along that stream, there are a lot of beautiful old growth forests. Low elevation old growth forests like those found in the Mule Creek Canyon are increasingly rare and important for many wildlife species. And the Mule Creek Canyon may be one of the best examples of low elevation old growth forest in the Applegate foothills region. The proposal also includes about 13 miles of Palmer Creek and an additional 4 miles of Kinney Creek, which are also both located in the Upper Applegate Valley. So these streams flow through the intact forests and woodlands of the Collins-Kinney Inventoried Roadless area on Forest Service lands. They also contain large swaths of low elevation forest, woodlands, and plant communities that are rare throughout Western Oregon, and are especially rare in this when they are found in this level of or as this quality of habitat. So what you have is these really beautiful low elevation forests that have been subjected to far less timber production and logging than the rest of the state here in Western Oregon. On Forest Service lands, the Forest Service is proposing a new hiking trail along the Applegate Ditch, a historic mining era ditch that traverses the Kinney and Palmer Creek watersheds. And this would be a very similar hiking experience to, say, the Sterling Mine Ditch Trail that has been designated an Oregon State Scenic Trail. Our proposal also includes about 13 miles of Star Gulch, which is mostly located on BLM lands in the Upper Applegate Valley. So Star Gulch begins at its headwaters in the Burton 9-mile roadless area, which has been designated by the BLM as a lands with wilderness characteristics. And the highest point in this watershed is Tallow Box Mountain, which kind of towers above the Applegate Valley and creates the headwaters of Star Gulch. Star Gulch includes spectacular old forests and numerous of the streams and upper tributaries, including Deadman Gulch, which is shown here. And these lower elevation streams are really important as deer and elk winter range habitat, as well as habitat for the Pacific fisher, black bear, and other wildlife species. They're also important for connectivity between the Siskiyou Crest and the high country up on the Siskiyou Crest, and these lower elevation forests and woodlands in the Applegate Valley and in the Applegate foothills. And these areas really, truly do contain some of the most intact, low elevation foothill habitats in the Applegate River watershed and in Western Oregon. In the upper portions of the watershed above the Applegate River or above the Applegate Reservoir, wild, clear streams pour down from the rocky summits of the Siskiyou Crest through deep forests on the mid-slopes. And although above the dam, these streams contain vast wild watersheds and many miles of free-flowing streams, including Elliott Creek, Carberry Creek, and the Middle Fork of the Applegate River. So this proposal, the proposal up above the Applegate Reservoir includes roughly 132 miles of stream, including wild, scenic, and recreational segments. This includes about 45 miles of Elliott Creek, which hydrologically speaking is the eastern fork of the Applegate River. And it's located on both sides of the Oregon and California border. So the stream kind of traverses the California border area and in some places extends onto both sides into Oregon and also into California. So Elliott Creek is a large stream. As I said, hydrologically speaking, it's kind of the eastern fork of the Applegate River watershed up at the headwaters. And it drains about 20 miles of the high country of the Siskiyou Crest. So a lot of this water pouring into this watershed is cold mountain water coming from snowmelt and high elevation springs. The stream straddles the Oregon and California border, sometimes flowing in Oregon and other times flowing through California before it feeds into the Applegate River and the Applegate Reservoir. So Elliott Creek is extremely steep and wild. It contains large roadless areas such as the Condry Mountain Inventoried roadless area and is the most rugged canyon in the Applegate River watershed. It also contains some unprotected roadless areas and uninventoried roadless areas up on Elliott Ridge, which are also really important in terms of the transitional and connectivity habitat that they provide between the foothills of the Applegate and the Siskiyou Crest. The headwaters of Elliott Creek contain incredible botanical diversity, including the Black Mountain Botanical Area, the Scraggy Mountain Botanical Area, the Dutchman's Peak Botanical Area, and the Observation Peak Botanical Area. So this is up on this photograph is up on Studhorse Creek in the, looking up at the Scraggy Mountain Botanical Area in the Elliott Creek watershed. So Elliott Creek also contains some really interesting schist soils. These consist of ancient metamorphized ancient floor sediments that have now been pushed up into mountains. And there's also serpentine soils in this area, which again are those ancient ocean floors, and decomposed granitics, which you can find in the Silver Fork Basin. And these are intrusive rocks that have developed within the last 100 million years. And then the overlying soils have eroded off, and we're left with these decomposed granitic slopes and mountains, which are both productive for forests, but also highly erosive. So the area is a stronghold for wildlife. It's an important piece of connectivity for both terrestrial and riparian species in the Siskiyou Crest region. Because of all the old growth forest that you find in the Elliott Creek watershed, it is a center for the endemic Siskiyou Mountain salamander. So this Siskiyou Mountain salamander is found only in the Applegate River watershed and nowhere else in the world. It lives in talus habitats, often moss-covered talus habitats, shaded by old growth forest. So it's a lungless salamander. It breathes through its lungs. It cannot disperse. It lives in if its habitat is destroyed or degraded, it cannot move to a more suitable habitat. It lives within a few square feet. It breathes through its it's lungless, so it breathes through its skin rather than its lungs. And it is found most abundantly in these old growth habitats and in the Elliott Creek watershed and in the adjacent Middle Fork watershed. There's also abundant old growth forest habitat for the northern spotted owl and large populations of the Pacific fisher. The Elliott Creek watershed also contains numerous interesting mining era cabins, mine sites, and a rich human history. including the Harlow Cabin, which is on the main stem of Elliott Creek, a few miles upstream from its confluence with the Middle Fork of the Applegate River. And this cabin has been protected under the National Register of Historic Places and is proposed for renovation by the Forest Service as a rental site, much like their historic lookouts. In recent years, conservation interests have acquired the pristine Black Mountain parcel, which is in the Dutch Creek watershed up above Elliott Creek. This uncut private land inholding at the headwaters of Elliott Creek and surrounded by the 25,000 acre Condrey Mountain Inventoried Roadless area was acquired by conservation interests. It's at the center of one of the Siskiyou Mountain's largest remaining unroaded old growth forests and was previously owned by the Fruit Growers Supply Company, which is an industrial timber company based out of Hilt, California, just over the Oregon border. And these forests were to be logged in the summer of 2019, but instead conservation interests joined together and we were able to buy out this parcel and protect it in perpetuity. Since that buyout occurred, the Fruit Growers Supply Company has offered conservation interests an additional 4,000 acres in the Elliott Creek watershed and in the Elliott Creek Canyon. This includes large tracts of uncut old growth forest and a section of stream known as the Elliott Creek Narrows due to the steep rocky canyon walls, narrow, swift-moving stream, and spectacular scenery. The area in question and proposed for conservation acquisition includes many acres of old growth forests and should be acquired as part of this wild and scenic legislation and added not only to the wild and scenic Elliott Creek, but also to the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest. So we have asked Senators Wyden and Merkley to take full advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime conservation opportunity and leave a legacy of ancient forest in the Elliott Creek watershed with this Fruit Growers Supply buyout. If these lands are not purchased by conservation interests, they will soon be logged and the habitat they provide will be lost, significantly impacting connectivity on the Siskiyou Crest and also in the wild and scenic Elliott Creek River watershed. So these lands in question have high conservation values. They're particularly important to conservation values here in the Applegate River watershed and in the Siskiyou Crest region. And as you can see, they do contain significant uncut old growth forests in need of protection. So we've also included portions of Carberry Creek, which is essentially the western fork of the Applegate River at its headwaters. And we have included numerous forks of Carberry Creek in our Wild and Scenic River proposal, including Steve Fork, Sturgis Fork, and Brush Creek. So this map shows the proposal. It includes about 50.5 miles of stream in the Carberry Creek watershed. It also contains important old growth forests. So Carberry Creek has a lot of old growth remaining in that watershed. Being at the western portion of the watershed, it tends to get some of the rain and some of that moisture coming in from the coast and supports a little bit more lush forest habitats than a lot of the more interior portions of the Applegate River watershed. The area also includes numerous clear-flowing streams and intact watersheds that feed both Steve Fork and the Sturgis Fork, as well as Brush Creek, and then feed into the main stem of Carberry Creek below. The area also has a lot of beautiful high country, draining both the Sturgis Fork and the Steve's Fork of Carberry Creek. Much of this watershed is bound by the Grayback Range, which is a high elevation spur ridge of the Siskiyou Crest that rises to over 7,000 feet. And this ridgeline divides the Applegate River watershed from the more coastal Illinois River watershed. And you can see Grayback Mountain here in the distance. This is the Hinkle Lake Botanical Area and the headwaters of O'Connell Creek and the Kangaroo Inventoried Roadless area. And you're looking down into the Steve Fork of Carberry Creek and out to Grayback Mountain in the distance. So the area also contains a portion of the Kangaroo Roadless area, Inventoried Roadless area, and the Oliver Matthews Research Natural Area, which is located up near Miller Lake, up on the Steve Peak Ridge. This area protects stands of Baker cypress, a very rare conifer species found in only 11 stands worldwide. It's the northernmost cypress species found in the world, and the second largest tree, or Baker cypress tree in the world, is found here in the Oliver Matthews Research Natural Area near Miller Lake up at the headwaters of Sturgis Fork. Carberry Creek also contains numerous botanical areas designated by the Forest Service. These include the Hinkle Lake Botanical Area at the top of O'Connell Creek. And there's also the Whiskey Peak Botanical Area up at the top of Slick Rock Creek, which is not included in the Wild and Scenic River proposal, but also includes a lot of wild, uncut forest and beautiful, diverse mountain scenery. So there's also the Grayback Mountain Botanical Area, which is found in the Carberry Creek watershed at the headwaters of O'Brien Creek. This area protects a beautiful, sloping wet meadow with numerous rare plant species that are found in that area. And it was protected in the Land and Resource Management Plan for the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest as a designated botanical area. So our proposal also includes Brush Creek, which is a low elevation tributary of Carberry Creek that flows through the edge of the Collins-Kinney Inventoried Roadless area. So this area contains a deep canyon with diverse low elevation conifer forest. It also includes numerous old mine sites, cabin sites, and unique historical values associated with the Steamboat Mine and the surrounding hard rock mine claims that were claimed up in the early portions of the 1900s. The proposal also includes about 31.5 miles of the Middle Fork Applegate River watershed. The Middle Fork is the crown jewel of Applegate River streams. It runs north from the Siskiyou Crest and the Red Buttes Wilderness area to its confluence with Elliott Creek, just above the Applegate River or Applegate Reservoir. The Middle Fork watershed contains the most intact habitats in the eastern Siskiyou Mountains and extensive old-growth forests. The main stem of the Middle Fork contains deep, clear pools, bedrock gorges, and just beautiful miles and miles of beautiful stream that is heavily used by recreationists in the area for swimming, camping, hiking, and other uses. There is also a lot of spectacular ancient forest in this watershed, both on the main stem of the Middle Fork and in the tributary streams, including the Butte Fork of the Applegate River, Whiskey Creek, and many of the other tributary streams. Most of this area contains uncut, old-growth mixed conifer forest. The area also includes vast portions of the Kangaroo Inventoried Roadless area, and directly above our Wild and Scenic River proposal is the Red Buttes Wilderness area. The Whiskey Creek watershed also runs up into the Whiskey Peak Roadless area, which is a citizen-identified roadless area of about 7,000 acres. And there is also the Strickland Butte Roadless area, which also extends to the slopes up above Whiskey Creek, and contains significant old-growth forests and south-facing montane chaparral slopes. The Middle Fork watershed also includes two botanical areas. This includes portions of the Whiskey Peak Botanical Area and the Cook and Green Pass Botanical Area, which is at the headwaters of Cook and Green Creek, a major tributary of the Middle Fork of the Applegate River and a major stronghold for old-growth habitats. At the headwaters of Cook and Green Creek is Elk Meadows, shown here in this slide. And it's within the Cook and Green Botanical Area and is perhaps the most intact high mountain meadow remaining on the Siskiyou Crest. So each tributary of the Middle Fork contains enormous old-growth forests, beautiful waterfalls like this one here on Slide Creek, And the proposal also includes many miles of the main stem of the Middle Fork Applegate River. As I mentioned earlier, the proposal also includes the Cook and Green Creek watershed, which is traversed by the 10-mile Cook and Green Creek Trail in the Kangaroo Inventoried Roadless area. Echo Canyon is also included in our proposal and is traversed by the Horse Camp Trail. It's also included in the Kangaroo Inventoried Roadless area and is directly adjacent to the Red Buttes Wilderness area. Another beautiful stream is Whiskey Creek, which pours into the Middle Fork of the Applegate River about midway between its headwaters and the Applegate Reservoir. It's accessible by the beautiful Whiskey Creek Trail and is located within the Strickland Butte Roadless area. The largest tributary of the Middle Fork is the Butte Fork, which drains the Red Buttes Wilderness area and the craggy summits of the Siskiyou Crest. The Butte Fork, excuse me, is the last fully intact watershed in the Applegate River Basin, and this proposal would protect its last unprotected stream reaches, including 5 miles of stream in the lower canyon. So please support, we're asking people to please support the protection of the Applegate River as a wild and scenic river. Portions of this river contain spectacularly wild streams that deserve protection. After over 30 years, the Applegate River watershed is due for some additional protections. Protecting these streams will ensure that they run wild and free for future generations, and it's up to us to make sure that they do. So we'd like to thank folks for enjoying this presentation. Critters like this pond turtle in the Applegate River watershed would really appreciate both residents of this area and of the state of Oregon prioritizing this area for protection, and also our state legislators prioritizing this area for legislative protections. So please consider supporting our proposal, supporting the Applegate Neighborhood Network and the Klamath Forest Alliance as we work to protect these areas, these roadless areas, these wild streams, these old growth forests, and the incredible biodiversity of the Applegate River watershed. So yeah, thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll be seeing new Wild and Scenic River segments in the Applegate River fairly quickly. Thank you very much.